9 minutes. But the Broncos had two things happen this past season that hadn't happened in years. And my question to you is, what's the most repeatable? So, Phil, I know you remember this. It was this time last year we're talking about a 4,000-yard passer, which hadn't happened since 2014. Still hasn't happened. A double-digit sack artist, which hadn't happened since 2018. A 1,000-yard receiver, which hadn't happened since 2019. And a 1,000-yard rusher that hadn't happened since 2019 when you last did it. And at the time, we were going through, hey, which is the most likely to happen? Well, two things happened. In the 2024 season for the Broncos. The Broncos had their first 1,000-yard receiver since 2019. That was Sutton, who was the last to do it. And then the Broncos also had their first double-digit sack season from both Nik Bonitto and Jonathan Cooper, first time since 2018. Which of those two things, the double-digit sack artist or the 1,000-yard receiver, is the most repeatable in 2025?
I'm going to go with the double-digit sack leader, right? The pass rushers that go and get the sacks. Why? Because, one, you have someone like Nik Bonitto that's chomping at the bits to get this contract signed. And if they don't, and I'm talking about George Payton and Sean Payton, if they don't get this contract finalized and finished before the season starts, because there's probably talks going on at least.
Sure.
I'm speculating, but usually that's what kind of happens.
Yeah.
Then you're going into that season with Nik Bonitto saying, okay, I'm getting ready to prove to the Broncos and I'm going to prove to the NFL that I deserve a mega contract. And that's when you start to have a guy that's just so focused, he's laser focused, that he's willing to do whatever it takes to get the sacks. Well, also on the other side, if you start to double up on Nik Bonitto, you have someone like Jonathan Cooper, who had double-digit sacks last year as well. That's a really good player, a solid player that plays disciplined football. But also he has a high motor and very strong. So you have an opportunity because, two heads are better than one. Obviously, that's what the Nuggets feel. You have two pass rushers that have done it before. Pick your poison. Are you going to double up on Nik Bonitto, or are you going to let both of these pass rushers have one-on-one opportunities, which is never good for a quarterback? So I'm going to go with the double-digit sack guy again, and it's either going to be Nik Bonitto or Jonathan Cooper again, Zach.
Ooh.
Or both. Go ahead. Hey, don't listen to me. Both of you guys have 10-plus sacks.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. I think it was a pretty good explanation from you why that's your answer.
That's why they call me the teacher.
I've never heard anyone call you that. But I think both are actually likely to happen. Do you agree with that? That both the 1,000-yard receiver and the Broncos having a double-digit sack artist is likely to happen?
I don't want to agree with that, and here's why on the offensive side, Zach. Because now you have a little bit more weapons at Bo Nix's disposal, right? You don't just have Courtland Sutton, but Vele is starting to come around. You don't just have Vele, you have Marvin Mims that you're getting involved. You don't just have Marvin Mims. You have Evan Ingram that you just brought in. So there's a lot of mouths to be fed on the offensive side of the ball. On top of that, if I'm a running back, it's like, where's my love at? I want to get at least 180 to 190 touches. So if you're running the ball more, which the Denver Broncos should do this year to control the clock and have that mentality of we're going to punch you in the mouth so get ready for the playoffs, you may not have one receiver go for 1,000 yards. That's my thought process.
Yep. Well, fair. I think it's fair. I would say this, though. Offensively, as a in the pass game,
yeah,
you dictate. You decide where the football goes. Defensively, you're reacting. And a lot of times, sacks can be circumstantial. Not all the times, but sometimes they can be. Like, dude, there's a year in the middle of Von Miller's prime where he had an 8-sack season. Sometimes it just doesn't go your way. And we've seen the two pass rushers do it once. I've seen Courtland Sutton be a 1,000-yard guy twice. And in terms of the number one receiver, super fair points about these other guys that are going to be getting involved, because I do think the offense for the Broncos will be more democratic this season. But there is one unequivocal number one wide receiver on this team. And Sean Payton is still going to want to throw that ball.
But are you going to force it? Are you going to force the ball to somebody that if he's double covered?
Do you think he forced it last year?
I think that over time, when the receivers started to catch, Marvin Mims started to do better, and Troy, not Troy Franklin, but Vele started to come along. It opened that door for Courtland to have more one-on-one opportunities. But there were times where Courtland was getting double-teamed, and Bo would force it. Well, if Bo is going to have a great year and not have the interceptions, he had 12 last year, he's not going. He doesn't need to force the ball. That's all I'm saying. Now,
sure.
there may be a situation where Courtland's not getting double teamed, and Courtland should be able to have a field day. But I just think there's a lot of mouths to be fed. There's a lot of promises out there. There's a lot of visions, like being this joker role for Evan Ingram,
sure.
and they're going to want to get him involved.
Sure. No, that's super fair. If you look at the targets for Sutton last year, 135 targets for Sutton. The next most targeted wide receiver was Devaughn Vele with 55. Think about that gap between 55 and 135. So I do believe Sutton will still lead the team in targets overall, but the Evan Ingram presence, you may be right about this. You may be right about.
Okay, is Courtland Sutton the only one that could get 1,000 yards this year? In your head, which is big. So is Courtland the only receiver capable of getting 1,000 yards in this offense?
I want to say yes. But there does exist a reality because Marvin Mims' plays are so huge and explosive.
You've been cheating off my paper.
Oh, is that what you had?
Yes.
There's because it was like you with carrying the ball.
Yeah.
A lot of your runs were so explosive.
It's like 30-yard runs, 40-yard runs, a 50-yard run,
yes.
10, 15, like the chunk plays.
That's how you get to 1,000. And that's one of the reasons why Courtland, I think, may not go for 1,000 because as his targets get lowered, he is not a big play guy, like an after-the-catch guy. He's more of a possession receiver. His yards after the catch, 179 total on the season. I think it exists within reality that Mims could actually be a 1,000-yard guy. I wouldn't bet on it. What do you think?
I'm with you. I have two. But for Mims, last year, Mims ended up with 503 yards, 6 touchdowns, and only 39 receptions.
That's crazy.
In 9 of those games, he only had 7 receptions, Zach. In 9 of the games at the beginning of the season, he had 7 receptions and only 56 yards. And then Week 10 happened. And Sean Payton got Marvin Mims going and got him more involved, and that's where he had breakout games.
Yes.
And he was able to be more explosive. So I like where your head's at. Because it's a big head, but it's doing the right thing. I like where your head's at with Marvin Mims. Another guy to me is Evan Ingram.
Sure. Wow.
Evan Ingram, because he's at the tight end position.
1,000 though?
So with 2023 with the Jacksonville Jaguars, he went for
903.
903, maybe a little bit more than that. You're probably on top of it.
Okay.
But there's a vision here with Sean. Sean's going to get Evan Ingram going early. Evan Ingram's going to have an opportunity to stretch the football fields. Now, some people are like, well, he's not that type of tight end. He's going to need to be that type of tight end, and he's going to have opportunities to be one-on-one with a nickel or a linebacker that he's faster than. So I believe that Bo Nix is going to get Evan Ingram involved early and often, early as possible, so that he can keep the chains moving. And if Evan Ingram can find ways to break some tackles and make these 5 and 10-yard catches into explosive 20, 30-yard gains, like he can get to the 1,000 yards. And there's 17 games to do it in.
Right. Well, I wouldn't, kind of like Mims, I wouldn't bet on Evan Ingram to get there. And by the way, you were right. It was more than 903. It's 963.
960, okay.
So
963.
He's never got there. Is he going to be a 1,000-yard guy in his 30s for the first time? We'll see. Again, I wouldn't bet on it. But with the Mims stuff, I like your point there. It was desert dry for Marvin Mims in the first 7 games of the year.
He was thirsty.
Desert dry. And if you just look at the last 10 games in the year, and 10 games is more than 7, so I think it's an appropriate sample size, and just stretch it out over the course of a season, I think he was on a 1,000-yard pace. If you just looked at the 10 games that he had success in, like if he did that over the course of a 17-game season, I think he's a 1,000-yard guy. I'll do math in the commercial break.
So the ultimate decision maker is going to be Sean Payton himself.
Yeah.
Because he's the offensive coordinator, and he's going to have to be very creative with the weapons that he does have. And if he's able to be creative with Marvin Mims, because Marvin Mims has that big playability, he has a speed, he can stretch the football field, and That's what we're looking for. He'll have a big opportunity, a major opportunity in front of him to go for 1,000 yards if Sean has it in his head and in his vision that Marvin Mims could be that guy.
Well, we are fixing to find out. And if you're just joining us and didn't know the genesis of this conversation, it was this time last year we were discussing what are the 4 things that hadn't happened in years were the most likely to happen. A 4,000-yard passer, a 1,000-yard rusher, a 1,000-yard receiver, or a double-digit sack artist. 2 of those things happened, and we're trying to decide which of the 2 is the most repeatable. On Monday, what we'll do is we'll look at the 2 things that didn't happen and which is the most likely to happen in 2025.
I still have some juju on the 1,000-yard rusher, man. They better come and apologize to me, or there's not going to be a 1,000-yard rusher.
Oh, moving on from Phil was a hex to the Broncos.
I'm just saying.
Wow.
I'm just saying.
Wow. I don't mind that. I don't mind that theory. Hey, so